What's going on, Sunbelt fans? My name is Dominic Rossetto, the host of the Sunbelt Syndicate podcast, where we review the week that was, look forward to the week ahead in Sunbelt football, basketball, and baseball all year long. Follow on all social platforms, including YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. So let's jump into Roundball Roundup for Week 13. Had some pretty good matchups in this one. We had Marshall going to App State. Marshall takes that one 66-58. Neither team shot particularly well. We had a couple players who performed pretty well overall, but nothing that blew anybody away. Marshall usually scores more than 66 points, and App State did not play ultimately all that amazing at home. I called the upset, and that one didn't come to fruition. But we had Taylor going off for 21 points. Kinsey, again, these two guys almost always the top scorers for Marshall. Kinsey had 15. We did have three players from App in double figures with Gregory, Harcum, and Abson, but just couldn't get it quite done from three, and didn't shoot great from the free throw line either. Not that it really came down to just two or three shots here, but again, not really a great game for App. I think they were hoping to take this one, considering how they dropped the first game of the year conference-wise up there at Marshall. So not great for them. Good for Marshall. Get right back into the thick of things in the conference race. We also had Southern Miss taking care of Troy, 74-65. This was a pretty close game throughout for the most part. Crowley led the way, 26 points, 23 points, 6 rebounds. And Williams had a great game for Troy, 18 points, 9 rebounds. But Southern Miss pulls away down the stretch, takes control of that one. James Madison, ODU, the battle for Virginia, at least as far as the Sun Belt is concerned. James Madison takes that one 78-73. Molson had a great game, 18 points, 19 assists. And Jenkins for ODU, the standout there, actually scored one more point than Molson, goes for 19. This one really, watching this one, James Madison jumped out to a very early lead, and ODU kept kind of battling back, and they got it close a couple times, but really just had that poor start not happen. I think this is a different game. I actually called ODU to win this one, and I think maybe in the rematch that could happen unless they come out with a poor start again. Without that poor start, this game is tightly contested, very close to the end. Definitely something ODU could have won, especially considering they were the home team this first time. Then we had the battle for Georgia with Georgia Southern and Georgia State going at it. This one in Atlanta. Great matchup, very chippy at times, honestly. Not a ton of stuff, but there was one incident that made it feel more like a Southern versus State game. So this one was fun to watch. Not the greatest shooting by either squad. Nobody even had 30 at the half. So not a great shooting night for either team. But Georgia State wins this one 64-60. Finch and Mann, the standouts in that one. Finch goes for 16. Mann, 18 points, 7 rebounds. We had ULM and Coastal Carolina. ULM just couldn't miss from three. Jamari Blackman just went completely off. 35 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. Definitely by far the player of the night. What's funny is Coastal's best player really on the night was also Blackman. Kylan Blackman with 15 points, but just wasn't going to be enough. It actually felt a little closer towards the end somehow. If you're really watching it and you knew the final score, obviously it didn't feel like it was all that close. But point-wise, it seemed like it got a little closer until ULM outpaced them towards the end. And then we had 2 blowout victories to end the night. South Alabama takes care of Arkansas State 82-86. Kevin Samuel went absolutely off. 20 points, 7 rebounds, completely dominant in the paint. Could not be stopped. As far as Arkansas State, they did have a nice-looking game from Ford Jr., who's a freshman, 21 points. Definitely starting to get hot there. If they get some guys healthy, this could be a vastly different Arkansas State team, especially come conference tournament time. So I'm not counting them out to possibly shock somebody on the first day, maybe even get into the second day and see what they could do there. But we'll see if that happens. They've really got to get healthy. They have a very short bench and a lot of injuries to overcome in order to do that. Louisiana takes care of Texas State 82-63. Williams Jr., 23 points, just a big shooting night. Also had a few dunks, taking it to the rack. Great performance overall by him as far as Texas State goes. Mason Harrell had a few good plays, but really the best player on the team for them that night was Caesar, who had 12 points, 6 rebounds. That covers Thursday's games. Let's go to Saturday's games. And if you've noticed from listening in the past, I'm trying to jump into more of a whole picture here. I've realized that I've just been focusing on some highlighted games, and sometimes that leads the team not to be talked about for a week or two. So I'm trying to spread the love here, just cover everything, still give you my quick version instead of going really, really in detail. But Saturday's games, we had James Madison rematching with App State. And JMU takes this one 63-57. Again, App State did not shoot well. Didn't even have 20 points at the half. They were stuck at 19. James Madison, 30. Much closer and better contested second half. In fact, App State outscored them in that second half, but it just wasn't going to be enough. Inacho has 10.7 rebounds. Gregory, 21 points, 9 rebounds. Pretty good performance overall from Gregory, especially with where he's been the last few games, but not enough to take down a really hot and streaking James Madison team at this point. We also had Southern Miss taking down Georgia State. Georgia State coming off that big victory over Southern, but cannot contain Hase. 26 points on the day. Man goes for 16 and 10 rebounds, but Southern Miss just too much there for Georgia State. South Alabama takes down UL and Monroe. Monroe off that really, really hot shooting night. Probably should have seen this coming. I thought maybe they'd stay a little bit hotter shooting from 3 and they would take this one. That was not the case. South Alabama dominates. Moore has 31.6 rebounds. Samuel also helps him get on the board, and they use him down inside. Blackman still goes for 23 points, great output, but just wasn't the night he had on Thursday. And so South Alabama jumping back up into the standings pretty well here with a couple wins strung together. Look out for them come tournament time, too. Kevin Samuel is an undoubted NBA future player, maybe not a first-day starter, but somebody who's going to be in the league with the talent and the size that he possesses. Arkansas State jumps back into the win column for the first time in what seems like forever. They take down Coastal Carolina easily, 73-57. You've got Ford having another great game. The freshman, 16 points, 8 rebounds. Oduje is trying to put together the week he had a few weeks ago. He goes for 13, but again, just not enough. After a pretty tightly contested first half, Arkansas State broke it open in that second half and took care of business there. Then you've got ODU and Georgia Southern. This is the battle of the two teams who just kind of lost to their rival, their in-state foe. Who was going to win this one? Well, it was a great game at halftime. It was 30-30 tied up. And then Old Dominion really just started to inch away ever so slightly there towards the end. Curry for Georgia Southern, 11 points, 13 boards. Long, 13 points as well, 12 rebounds. So you got two of the bigger guys down low who can really get it done, and it just looks like Old Dominion, again, stays a little bit better at home, even though they dropped that one to James Madison. They definitely shot a little bit better than Georgia Southern in order to take this one. Another tightly contested game here between Troy and Texas State. Mason Harrell, big game. He kind of started heating up towards the end of the game on Thursday, but he definitely had the better game on Saturday. Goes for 20 points all by himself. But you've got Williams for Troy with 19 points, 7 rebounds, even 3 steals on the night. That was just going to be too much for Texas State to overcome, and they stay in that loss column. They're still continuing to try and find their stride in conference play. Then we had the biggest matchup of the weekend, probably the biggest matchup of the conference slate so far. I thought it was going to live up to expectation. I thought it was going to be really tightly and closely contested, but by halftime, you kind of figured that wasn't going to be the case. Louisiana up 36-28 at the half. Not much of a doubt. Obviously, basketball is a game of runs, but it just never felt like it was ever going to get all that close. Credit to Marshall. They did close the gap a little bit. Kinsey goes for 28, but Brown, future NBA pick, 26 points, 20 rebounds on the night. Louisiana continues to dominate at home and take care of business in the Sun Belt. They are obviously atop the standings, and we'll take a quick look at that. Now, again, Cajuns and Southern Miss actually tied atop the standings at 10-2 at the moment, right? We're not going to break down into tiebreakers at this point in time, but both teams undefeated at home. Both just have 4 losses overall. Both teams really looking good. I would favor Louisiana over Southern Miss at this point just by the eye test, but both teams could certainly battle to switch the head up here, and these conference games are going to become even more important down the stretch. You just really, at this point, with these two teams, you can't afford to drop one. Then we've got these, I'd say, three teams kind of combined together. You've got JMU, Marshall, and ULM. Now, ULM is 7-5, the other two teams 8-4, but I really think this could switch up. We've seen how hot ULM can shoot from three. They can't go cold, right? They can't afford to go cold anymore, but they've got to keep winning these games. The problem for them is their schedule coming up is not easy, whereas James Madison and Marshall both have a little bit easier schedules. So it may be a little bit too much for ULM to overcome, but again, they shoot well from three, and they don't need to go inside and dominate in the paint in order to beat people. So if they can stay hot from the perimeter and teams struggle to defend them, ULM could certainly jump back into that top four rather easily. James Madison and Marshall, I think they're both going to be right there too. If I had to say one of them falls out, I'm picking James Madison just because of the early season, a little bit inconsistency. The very early season, they were very good. Once they got into conference play, a little bit inconsistent there. So if they drop back into that a little bit more inconsistent play, I could see them falling out if ULM gets hot. But right now, you're probably looking at the top four: App State, Troy, Old Dominion, Georgia Southern, South Alabama in that next pod, right, that would play that Thursday for a conference tournament. You've got Texas State, Coastal Carolina, Georgia State, Arkansas State in the bottom four. I would say I don't see that changing, although let's note that Georgia Southern is on a 4-game losing streak. If they continue to drop some of these games, maybe Texas State, maybe Coastal Carolina can kind of jump up above them. I don't think Georgia State's going to do it. They've got one more loss than those other two teams in Texas State and Coastal. Not sure they're going to be able to jump up that far. But, hey, that's why they play the games, right? We're going to have to see what happens with that. As far as games coming up this week, we've got App State playing ULM, James Madison and Georgia Southern. We've got South Alabama and Troy, a bigger matchup than maybe it looks like in the standings, and we've definitely got a really good one Thursday night to cap it off. 8:30 on ESPN+, Louisiana and Southern Miss, the top two teams in the conference. This one's going to be a battle. Definitely check that one out. And then looking ahead as well for Saturday's games, you don't really have any real amazing matchups in this one, but I'll pick out two games that I would say keep an eye on. Again, like I said, with UL Monroe, they could get hot. They play a Southern Miss team that could be coming off a loss to Louisiana, or could be coming off a big win to Louisiana. Either way, I could see it being a big game for ULM to try and take advantage of with where Southern Miss is. Either they're too high on that victory off of Louisiana, or maybe they're doubting themselves, depending on how that game goes. If it's a bad loss for Southern Miss, ULM thinks they're going to keep themselves rolling and take advantage of that. You've also got Louisiana and Troy. This is a bigger matchup than it seems. Again, with the standings, Troy beat Florida State earlier this year. We know that they can be good. They have been a little bit better as of late because they had a couple streaky games where they'd have one half where they really were dominant or one half where they were really cold. So it'll be interesting to see if that's the type of game they could have against Louisiana, because this one's at home for Troy and could turn the tide. So keep an eye on those games for this weekend. That will do it for Round Ball Roundup for Week 13. As always, check us out on the social pages. We'll be doing game previews, also dropping a highlight package. Let me know your thoughts on that. The first one I did was a little bit long, so we'll see if there's some thoughts or feelings on maybe just doing a shorter package, maybe just more of the bigger plays and not so much of the whole story of the game. But, certainly let me know your thoughts and feelings on that on the YouTubes. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.